You're goddamn right it is.
All right, welcome to Movie Night Extravaganza, episode 46, Aliens, not to be confused with Alien, the original Ridley Scott one that I watched on my iPhone. This one, of course, is the James Cameron sequel. Interesting, I think, that there's so many different kinds of, like so much tech and weapons, and they still couldn't figure out how to get fucking Leonardo DiCaprio onto that door at the end of Titanic. But I guess that's something to take up with James Cameron, though. I am joined by my co-host number one since the beginning, since day one, J. Andrew World. How's it going?
Pretty good. Just crossing my T's and dotting my I's and everything so we can be fantastic.
Perfect. All right, our third mic, second co-host, Conan Neutron. You know him from Protonic Reversal. Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. World famous touring band. What's going on? You got home 30 minutes ago?
Yeah, just flew in from San Francisco, and boy, my arm's tired. Great to be here. I love Aliens. This is going to be good. Looking forward to it. That's it. Keep it succinct this time.
Yeah. All right. Good. I like this. We're keeping it moving. Keep it moving.
All
right. Kristina Oaks. I'm Kristina on Twitch. Also streaming there, I guess, right now. I mean, I guess you're hosting
yes.
this show.
Yes. You don't know?
Yes, that's why I said yes. Thumbs up.
Not you, Forrest. I'm just busting it.
But Aliens is a cherished movie of my childhood, which is kind of weird considering the rating. But yeah, I'm excited to discuss this movie.
Cool, nice. All right, we're also joined once again by Erica Strout, a Georgia-based filmmaker, music video director, and musician. She's half of the musical duo Dream Tent, plays guitar and sings in Motherfucker, and the live band of Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends.
What? Hello. The Alien franchise has been a favorite of mine for a long time. I'm really excited to be here with y'all.
Did we just out you as a secret friend?
I didn't know that I was in the secret friend closet. Is there a closet?
It's massive. There's plenty of storage space.
Is there a mini bar in there?
Yeah, you better. I sure as hell hope so today.
Conan Neutron's secret friend's closet is, of course, a green room. They've built it from the ground up.
Well, my room is green.
I was gonna say, apparently you're in the band.
All right, so I like the Alien franchise. I've watched them when I was like a lot younger. Re-engaging with them now, I don't think that I had too much of an awareness or like movies when I saw these movies as a kid. So I'm happy to revisit them. This one, I think, a lot more than Alien, kind of takes like a very 80s, which where I want to start this conversation, like a very 80s. I'm not saying like anti-capitalist, but like a definitely a populist, like anti-corporation message to it, right? Like the company, of course, in both movies, Alien and Aliens is the villain, but Sigourney Weaver's, Ellen Ripley seems to, when she wakes up like 57 years later, seems to not fully engage with the fact that, it was the company that set her up in the first movie and set up the entire crew. She seems to be willing to accept that, like, this company might have been a malfunction with the AI, that caused a lot of this in an accident. And she seems to resists going on this new mission, but doesn't seem to fully acknowledge that the company is evil.
Even in space, you're still living in capitalist realism.
Yeah.
Hey, Space Force, let's go.
So that's where I wanted to start the conversation. I mean, if anyone has thoughts on that,
well, I've kind of brought this up a bit in past streams that we've done, where there was a kind of zeitgeist, and I know you hate that word, but give me a better word and I'd be happy to use it. In that era of like anti-corporatism in films, but like it's a very specific thing, and this might be kind of the first one that fully took it on head on. You could argue there's elements of it in Blade Runner, but there's definitely some. This is a trend that because Aliens was a game changer in many ways for science fiction films, and just because it was able to combine like so many different themes into it so effectively, and did the sequel quite well. I mean, was able to build something incredible.
Yeah, and I think too is that this is like there was a bit of that anti-corporatism like messaging going on, especially with Reagan being in office.
Yeah.
So this was like a big like middle finger to Reaganism and just how things were just changing in the 80s, like in a very like negative way. So a lot of these movies, especially sci-fi movies, knew how to slide in that messaging. Of course, when I was younger, I had no idea that's what it was about. I was just, it's a grown woman trying to protect the girl from aliens. But now that I'm older, I'm like, this is like a middle finger to like Ronald Reagan, probably.
There's also a really interesting, I mean, the company is kind of it's the famous book about the CIA. And so this kind of, it seems like both the military and the military is like pretty much privatized in this space venture, and they seem to be kind of pretty much
one corporation, right?
Yeah,
instead of 5 corporations by Fugazi, it's one corporation. It's all Weyland-Yutani.
Yeah, so it's interesting that kind of the company as a name kind of takes on the same at least in this movie, insidious like CIA intelligence state kind of thing. And for the idea that they have research labs, they're doing their own R&D, it seems like, what I mean, like they're trying to, in both movies, they're trying to bring back aliens to fucking study them so they can colonize these planets in a different way. And so they know what threats to, watch out for. And also probably so they have bioweapons to use against other, like other groups that they might find out in space. And they're willing to do pretty much anything, sacrifice as many lives as possible for that goal. So it kind of, in the same way, I think there's a growing awareness within the 80s with Reagan. The CIA is used in this way, right? Like Operation Condor, like the idea that, we kind of pretty much colonize places and then send out the intelligence state to overthrow governments, to, to have our own commerce be represented. Like we use them in the most insidious possible ways, and to have the company as, as the name is interesting. I don't know how purposeful it is, at least because it's taken from the first movie. And I mean, the 70s are kind of when the awareness of this grows.
Yeah, this is more of a 70s movie, in my opinion, just kind of to add on to what you're saying there. It's out of the 70s paranoia of I mean, like it is a Vietnam War movie, really, is what it is. Whereas, I did a stream recently on my channel about Screamers, talking about Endless War. This isn't quite the Endless War. This is more of the Vietnam, take on things. I don't quite know how Screamers got that right in the mid 90s, but that's a conversation for another video. But this one is definitely more, from that Vietnam, perspective, and has that post Watergate paranoia as well.
Yeah.
So, you were going to say, Kristina.
Oh, you're like absolutely right though. Like there's like so much subtle messaging about how shady like the CIA is, and like how this is a post-Vietnam, post-Watergate movie for sure. I just think it's interesting how it's like when we hear about how the Space Force is being formed. Apparently, it's the 1-year anniversary of the Space Force. So I'm like, this movie was so ahead of its time with that.
They don't have a Space Force, though. It's the Marines in
No.
this.
Yeah,
Colonial
like
Marines.
it's just.
I mean, yeah,
But if you look at the Space
Yeah.
Force pictures, they don't have aliens stuff on it. It's all Star Wars.
I'm like,
It's a too on the nose because like I thought it was satire because here's these military guys they're doing opening this Space Force base, and they're all hanging out with Imperial stormtroopers. I'm just like, guys, you're too on the nose.
So, Erica, what do you think about all that? I got some thoughts too, but I'd like to hear from you first.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree with the points that have been made. I hadn't thought about it as far as like the time period of it. To me, it just felt like a lot of sci-fi movies, and maybe this is like Andrew said, like that it was one of the first ones to really like address that issue head on. But definitely seems like a common theme to have like that corporate greed, like anti-capitalist sometimes, messaging in there woven into the story.
RoboCop's another one, right? Like I think it's a year later after.
Sure.
This,
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
feels
and
very
it's
similar.
the best cop movie ever.
Yeah.
It's got everything you love: gratuitous violence.
Yeah. Well, in the 80s,
Gratuitous commercial.
there was so much change. And, yeah. There were so many
Privatization.
crazy things
You can
happening
just,
at that time.
But yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to say that I actually think it's quintessentially 80s in the fact that it basically started what we think of as modern action franchise. Like it's like one of these, what we think of as action movie cliches. A lot of them, we saw them for the first time in Aliens, and even including stuff that Cameron did later and maybe became better known for in later movies, things like T2, stuff along those lines. But additionally, I think in the first movie, if you really look into it, like the Weyland-Yutani company, it's kind of, a little bit, that's a little shady. And then by Aliens, it's like, yo, these guys are straight up evil. Like they will do anything, including like, they don't care who lives and dies because they're going to make money off of these creatures, these aliens, and they're
They
going to
want the
weaponize.
technology,
They're
right?
willing to try to impregnate, women,
Yeah.
girls, anyone.
Doesn't matter because it's going to make them money, and they know it's going to make
Yeah.
them money, and so it's ultimately it's the ultimate expression of the free market. It's just it's completely moralless in any way, shape, or form, and profit above anything else. But again, I think you hit an important point of being RoboCop around the same time because there was kind of. And it was a backlash against the greed is good Reaganomics mindset within the 80s, but there really wasn't a lot of representation like that in sci-fi for this. That's what makes this interesting because you don't have to care about any of that to be like, oh man, they're gonna like, what's going on? This is crazy. Like everything's getting blown up. They're coming after them. And then like later on, you're like, hey, wait a second, that wasn't very ethical of that corporation to do, like whatever. Like, or you're not, and that's fine. And that's one of the things that makes it an enduring film. And other than being, again, as I mentioned, one of the catalysts for what we think of as the modern, big explosion blockbusters.
And using kind of Paul Reiser, who has this
best use of Paul Reiser I can think of, really.
Yeah, like this reputation as like kind of being a nice guy. Like I find it actually really funny that I've been listening to a lot of TrueAnon for while the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is going on, and they described one of the witnesses that were testifying, like one of the witnesses that I think was corroborating a story from another witness, as having like Paul Reiser vibes, like as in like nice boyfriend vibes. So it was funny, like a week later to watch this movie, but it's kind of it's the rise of a new kind of company man too, right? Like it's a different, a new generation, I guess.
Yuppie.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I remember
100%,
watching Stranger Things.
A whole new category of guy.
Yeah, that's great.
I remember watching Stranger Things and seeing Paul Reiser in it, and I'm like, this dude has a very familiar face. I just can't put my finger on it. And then I was watching Aliens afterwards, and I was like, oh, that's him.
Because it really feels like we kind of still think of like older like we kind of now have this stereotype, I guess, of like the younger bro stockbroker or like the younger bro kind of guy trying to shake things up at the company. But like
I've worked with those dudes, and it's a stereotype for a reason. There's a lot of those guys.
No, but like, but I'm saying in terms of like movies, right? Like with these characters that appear a lot, it feels like in the 80s a lot of times they think of kind of the boardroom as having a lot of older men and kind of older women that are kind of just sitting around talking about like how to make more money and all this stuff, and that kind of it's easy to kind of throw that away and say, well, obviously, I'm kind of anti this. I don't want these older people who just care about money that are probably going to die off soon, having control over everything. But in kind of
get the bottom line.
But like inviting this younger, nice seeming, definitely sketchy, but like it doesn't seem like Paul Reiser in this movie at first is going to end up being as cutthroat and evil as he is. Like it's kind of the embodiment of the company as like almost this like more sensitive, like face that once he starts saying like, oh well,
the Pete Buttigieg of this particular outfit.
I mean, his character is a total coward on top of all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time. I know this is ridiculous, but for some reason I have a hard time liking Paul Reiser because of his character in this movie.
Yeah, same. Like he just looks like one of those guys that's sus.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
I guess he just played it too well.
Shady the house, like oh my god, because he's known for playing like he does play like shady, suspicious characters, especially in like that's why they casted him in Stranger Things. I think in like season 1 or season 2, where he plays like the character that's involved with like that like upside down like world or whatever. I'm trying to remember. Company. It's been a long time since I've seen Stranger Things, but I'm like, oh, they picked him because he's known for playing that one specific character in Aliens. Mm-hmm. This role would be perfect for him.
Yeah, I think they actually gave it to him because of Aliens, but not Mad About You.
Yeah,
wait, you're saying this movie for nostalgia?
I was just trying to think of like something he was in other than Mad About You, where he was like a nice guy.
I
can't think of anything.
My Two Dads.
Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. Good example.
I was always a fan of that show because I always wanted like a loft apartment with all the crazy furniture that I would design as an artist. But growing up as an artist, realizing like that show's just so unreal.
But I wanted to bring in two quotes.
I don't know how we got on that, but all right.
No, but I wanted to bring in 2 quotes that I had written down. That's why I'm kind of searching this Google Doc. The first one is when Ellen Ripley, and this is kind of the like believe the science moment of this film, I think, when she's talking about how nuking the installation is really the way to make sure that humanity never has to deal with this colony of aliens. Like it's the smart plan, it's the plan that's gonna like work, like it's the only plan that's gonna work. And the first thing he says is, hold on one second, this installation has a substantial dollar value attached to it. And then she says, they can bill me, which is objectively like a badass line.
Yeah.
When you're defending science. And he says, okay, look, this is an emotional moment for all of us. Okay, I know that, but let's not make snap judgments. This is clearly an important species we're dealing with, and I don't think that you or I or anyone has the right to arbitrarily exterminate them. Which is like the same kind of concern trolling, I think, that happens a lot of times with corporations now, where it's like they're willing to use kind of this liberal language or like this progressive language of like, because presumably speaking, like, we're kind of in it, like in a time of conservation where it's like, oh, well, we need to conserve the species. You can't just, exterminate them. Like we need to, have, but of course it's all about that dollar value. It's all about the bottom line. So
she's like, fucking watch me.
Yeah. It's everything has value.
Yeah.
Everything has value. You can't, mess with nature or mess with species or do this or do that. And I'm like, why do cockroaches exist? Why do they exist? I don't understand. There's some things that I feel like I'm like, why do they even exist? Murder hornets. Why do we need them?
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes. Why do we need them?
Well, and when she first says it too, like the only person on board is Bill Paxton, who like everyone's like, oh God, this guy. But as much as like they don't want to hear the message from him, because like granted, he's not wrong, but he is annoying. But he's not wrong. Totally he's 100% right about all of it. Like he's like, they should get the fuck out of there. So when she says that, he's like, yeah, I'm with her, man. Yeah, like. but nobody wants to hear it from him because he's not the one that they're like,
Yeah, I remember the love for Bill Paxton after this movie, and it's just like, okay, Bill Paxton was right, but you want to stand that guy?
Yeah, well, exactly, because it's the whole thing is like he's right for the wrong. He's right because ostensibly he's a coward.
Yeah,
but he's not wrong.
Well, he's like this burnt out soldier trope from Vietnam. He's almost like Dennis Hopper.
Exactly,
you know?
kind of shell shocked, kind of.
You can kind of see the Dennis Hopper in his performance,
But that's initially that's the only person who agrees with Ripley.
Yep.
Who also is 100% correct. Nuke it from space.
All right. So the second line from Carter Burke I wanted to bring in is, what if that ship didn't exist? Did you ever think about that? I didn't know. So now if I went and made a major security situation out of it, everybody steps in, administration steps in. There's no exclusive rights for anybody. So I made a decision, and it was a bad call, Ripley. It was a very bad call. When he's kind of justifying the fact that, not knowing 100% that Ripley was correct, not knowing 100% that that there really was an alien species on this planet. He was like, you have to think about the bottom line. Like, this is do you really want no exclusive rights for anybody? And after after this week of Elon Musk getting the person of the year, and knowing about his whole
wait what
that happened.
He did. You didn't know that?
Oh,
I've been kind of out of the news cycle, but I did notice that, and I was like, haha, that's funny. And it was like, oh no, that's for real. Oh shit.
How?
Crypto? I don't know.
Because he blew up. He accidentally blew up his a rocket on the launch pad.
Innovative.
But listen, I wouldn't have done any kind of deep dive into it. But I've been doing this. I've been producing Kenzo's new show, so like we end up talking about political stuff, which it's been a very jarring move away from just doing this show into like having to do like a political show again. And I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, less mise en scene, more mise en douche.
You got to keep up with it now, huh?
So, all right. Wow. So I wanted to bring in this clip of James Cameron, kind of bringing it back to the movie itself and the process of making it. I watched the making of documentary. This isn't from that, but this is James Cameron talking about how everybody had pretty much told him not to make this movie because they felt like, interestingly, anything that he did well, Ridley Scott would have anything he did well, Ridley Scott would have gotten credit because he made the original movie and like this is his kind of universe. Anything that flopped in this movie, everybody kind of that was advising James Cameron at the time, who was like one of the most up and coming, promising filmmakers at this moment. They were like, listen, if this movie flops, everyone will blame you. If this movie succeeds, everyone will be like, wow, Ridley Scott's still a genius, huh? So I as someone that wants to be a director, as someone that like enjoys writing, because he like writes his own projects, which is kind of an amazing thing.
Titanic.
So I liked this clip because it kind of shows that if you really want to nerd out and people are like, listen, don't nerd out this way, and you push it, like you might succeed.
I am as this ridiculous fanboy turned director, now wanting to do the sequel to Ridley Scott's much vaunted Alien film, and everybody tried to talk me out of it. They said, well, don't do that because anything that's good in your movie will be attributed to Ridley, and anything that's bad will be attributed to you. It's a no-win scenario. And I said, but I really want to do it. It'll be cool. It was like this ridiculous, stupid thing. It wasn't strategic at all. But I knew it would be cool because what Ridley had set in motion was the creation of a world, the creation of a kind of a visual set of values, the kind of the biomechanoid Giger designs and the kind of lived-in future, the blue-collar future where what is happening on the screen feels so real and so palpable because the characters are so recognizable. These were new ideas then. Science fiction hadn't done that. A little bit in Star Wars with the kind of used future look, but Alien was a remarkable film, and it influenced a generation of filmmakers, especially those that like science fiction and fantasy. And I was one of them. And I was as much doing an homage to what Ridley had created as I was making my own movie, but I did set out to do both in a balance.
Talk to me, Hudson. I got signals. I got readings in front and behind.
I didn't think I could outdo Alien for pure shock. I don't think anybody could. It certainly has been tried a great number of times, and nobody's really done it. I mean, going into a movie theater on opening night, not knowing what to expect, the mystery, the wonder, and then the sudden shock and terror that film created, you can't beat that. So I had to come up with an end run around that would be equally entertaining for an audience, but in a different way. And I knew I could do action. I knew I could do white knuckle action, that I could turn the screw tighter and tighter in an action sequence. So I figured, all right, let's do that. Let's jump off from the horror premise into what ultimately becomes an action film. I don't think Ridley liked the fact that I came along and kind of trampled around in his little world that he'd created. And now, as a filmmaker, having made the two Terminator films, and then seeing others work in the same sandbox, I know what that feels like.
I can't believe that's what he looks like.
I forgot.
I didn't know he looked like that.
And I gotta be honest, I didn't even know that James Cameron actually directed Aliens. I thought Ridley Scott did.
There you go.
That's how good this is why I say this a lot, that Aliens is the perfect example of a sequel actually maybe being better than like it's like predecessor, like what comes before it.
Bold words.
I mean, I don't know if I'd say better, but I think different enough that it really works.
Yeah,
because they switch genres. I think they're able to actually kind of
H.R. Giger. H.R. Giger. H.R. Giger.
Just continuing the bit from last time. Go on.
By the way, they did not consult H.R. Giger on anything that happened in this movie.
No, they did have I just forgot the guy who did it, who's also incredibly talented in his own way. And
they already paid
Predator.
Well,
Predator actually came out of this movie. They had the actual initial design of Predator from the sketches, and they're just like, oh, that's cool, and they started kind of developing it on the side, and then somehow the movie got made.
Well, the thing that I was thinking about when I watched this, and I didn't know that this was the same person, but I was thinking about being a kid and watching Jurassic Park, and that movie came out when I was a kid, and I really so Stan Winston, who had designed the Velociraptors and all the dinosaurs, really, his team had designed everything in Jurassic Park.
Right.
Years before, had been designing everything in Aliens. So this movie. So when she first sees the queen and it turns around that corner and there's that terrifying moment where the queen kind of looks at her and the body tilts. I was thinking about when everyone was hiding in Jurassic Park and the Velociraptors were coming after them. And it does that tilting where it just looks at them through the, as it's walking over, and realizing that it was the same designers and the same people working with those things. I was like, oh, that makes perfect fucking sense.
Yeah. And Stan Winston is incredibly talented. I mean, he was so good at what he did, with special effects and practical effects. He managed to, take something that wasn't his initially and actually do something pretty incredible with what he had.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to, because he had to create more. He had to create a whole colony of aliens and a queen and eggs and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I have two clips that we can talk about for this. I watched the making of Aliens last night, and it was really fun to watch, to be honest. But this is talking about the alien suits, and then I also have, after we talk about this, I have when the team that he was working with is talking about testing out the queen to see if it worked, and both clips are really interesting, I think.
I can't wait to see him.
Design changes when you went from Alien to Aliens was the fact that technically the alien suits were far simplified, and that was in an effort to gain them maximum mobility. Cameron knew exactly how he was going to shoot these things, and he knew how it was going to be sort of an interplay between shadow and light on these things. And that was the whole element of the aliens that he wanted to get across on film, was just seeing the movement of living creatures coming out of the dark and into the light, moving through the light, and never really focusing, never really studying them. And probably that was directly connected to the fact that there were hordes of aliens this time and not just one that we were focused on.
we started building in LA, but we'd build the suits, and Cameron would like go into the hallway with a guy in a suit, and he'd turn the camera upside down, and we'd look at him. What's he doing? He'd videotape a guy crawling on the floor upside down, and then go, hey, what do you think of this? And then there it is, of course. Oh yeah, crawling on the ceiling. Yeah, great. So he was very interested in expanding the capabilities of the creature.
What Jim wanted to do with the alien warriors was to give them more character, not necessarily in the design of what they look like, but how they could act, what their performance was. And in order to do that, we had to redesign how that suit was made.
Jim's script had so much more action, things bouncing off walls and doing stuff. So we had to play with the anatomy, camera techniques, reverse shots, looking up, shooting down on wires. We had levels of alien warrior suits. Some of them were as simple as spandex dance skins with very rough pieces on that would just catch highlights so that men could really fly around very quickly.
We had a whole range. We had dancers, we had stuntmen, we had just body performers that would all do different things in these suits. And then they were painted very starkly. They were very contrasty, bright, hot highlights and dark shadows. And when you look at them in full light, they almost had the feeling of, this like a skeleton costume you would wear for Halloween with the just painted bones. But when you put it in the right environment and when you lit it right, it was just the coolest thing. At that point, then it just became more of a feeling of an image rather than really focusing on a single character.
We built them in such a way that they would be more durable. They could go on and off quickly, and that they wouldn't have pieces that might be more susceptible to breaking. And for instance, the dome on the alien, Jim just wanted to remove it. Thought it would be a hassle. That was afraid of it cracking or having to be replaced. We'd have to cut and switch the dome out, whatever.
We tried to recreate the original Giger look, and we were so proud of it. We're like, yeah, that looks so clear and cool. And he's like, take that off. Yeah, that's good. Oh.
Beyond the men in the suits, we also had a dozen 8-foot-tall mannequins / puppets that were posable into pretty much any static form you wanted, and we could, by using wires and rods, do some limited puppeteering on them. But they were able to be posed in very insectoid poses, like a praying mantis kind of effect, crouching on the roof of the APC as Ripley pulling out of the atmosphere plant, and things like that, so that Jim could ask for inhuman, impossible man in a suit poses, and he could get them on film.
Damn right. Film that shit.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of amazing looking though, right? Because it looks at once like a person and not at all like a person. Just how the movement is.
Yeah, that's why they had to get people who were flexible in a way so that they could move a certain way. But like looking at this, I'm like, man, the new Alien movies that they got out now can't compare to this because of the fact it's real people dressed up. It's practical. It looks more real, more lifelike. Now they just use CGI, and it's not the same. It doesn't have, it doesn't have that same impact. Like right now, that looks terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But these days, stuff like that just doesn't scare anymore, in my opinion. It looks too fake.
One project I think that's used that's been great at using a combination, I think, of CGI a lot of times and like the actual people in costume is Walking Dead's done a great job at times of doing that. And Gail Ann Hurd, who's the executive producer of this movie, is also like one of the overseeing producers of the Walking Dead universe.
She's done so much stuff too. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, she's James Cameron's wife, or was at the time of this movie.
Yeah,
so it's interesting. She did a lot of work on this movie too, and I think understanding. I don't think that you necessarily have to say, well, I prefer your CGI to real like effects work, but like knowing where the balance is between the two, I think is really important. And you know, the fact that there is a balance that's pretty crucial. It was interesting realizing that I was like, where do I know her from? And I'm like, oh shit, like Walking Dead.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because for me, Aliens is the perfect example of like in the original, in the Ridley Scott movie Alien, like it's so crazy that she's locked on this ship with this crazy thing that like is seemingly indefeatable and like just utterly unlike anything we know. But the thing what makes Aliens interesting is like, what if there was a bunch of them? So add in like your Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead style attitude. But they move fast, and their blood is acid, and their eggs can impregnate you.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and it really is a zombie movie.
That's terrifying.
It's got the same mechanics of it, right?
That's I remember watching this when I was young, and my grandfather would have it on, and I remember watching the scene where the thing's trying to impregnate, Ripley and Newton. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I'm like, this is scary.
What is my grandpa into?
Yeah. Oh, he loves scary movies and sci-fi. But you know what's interesting?
Hentai.
If anyone has ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if you ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there's that one episode where they had to do like the fake child, like health science with an egg. And the egg thing comes out, and it looked like the face huggers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, oh my God, it's happening again.
Yeah.
So a lot of that inspiration really like lived on in other projects where they would tackle sci-fi and horror.
Yeah.
The one
hugely
thing
influential,
The one thing I really remember from watching Aliens was this was the one of the few times my parents actually let me eat in front of the TV. And we actually had dinner in front of the TV that this.
And I said, "We're serving you squid
as a family, and spaghetti." So,
oh no!
I was just chowing down on my spaghetti though. Just so engrossed in it.
Uncharacteristically speechless about that, but yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting after watching Arrival too, right? Like they have the giant squid aliens in this movie. I mean, both this one and the original Alien, kind of the face huggers, which kind of remind me of like a very similar design. Not in the sense of like obviously in Arrival they're giant squids, but like it's the same kind of creature design, right? Like the tentacles come out and like grasp your face, and so I think Aliens as squids is an interesting I think segue for the show, like or as that kind of creature, right? Like that kind of design, rather than kind of like the classic. Like we haven't seen very many watching through this, the classic like humanoid alien that we kind of think of first and foremost, like the gray aliens, I guess is what they technically call them. We haven't watched any of those movies, like.
Well, and I think also, it's a second stage danger, right? Because it's not just that these things will kill you; it's that like you will be host to something against your will.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
They're going to keep you alive, but only so that you can.
Yeah. It's like
go
Texas.
through this torture.
Yeah.
Serves them. Texas.
I really want
to give birth without watching.
Can we like make
I'm not ready for that one,
argument?
Conan.
Sorry.
Let's tell pro-lifers. Have you ever seen Alien or Aliens? Do you know the whole process of what it's like? Do we force these humans to like have some weird thing sit on their face, shove eggs down their bodies, and then like they explode? And like, should we be forcing people to do that?
Watch how fast that law changes.
I mean, you could definitely go into the making the argument that with the corporation, Paul Reiser's character, like being okay with her, getting impregnated by one of these things, like, or getting whatever you want to say, they lay their eggs in her, and like she's the carrier back to them so that the main station, so they can like study the whole thing. It's like,
and like the 9-year-old girl too, like.
Yes,
bodies
they were
kind of serving a purpose for
children.
culture instead of their own, constitution.
Yeah,
like that whole thing. But I wasn't going to bring it up. But now you said that thing.
There's a pro-choice
really your
argument to be
fault,
made
Conan.
here now. So
it usually is.
But I mean, I think that making a connecting line like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, snatching bodies, a similar process of kind of that, against your will. I mean, in that sense, duplicating you, but like again, like against your will, laying eggs in you is like the next terrifying level of that. Like, all right, like everybody around you is like suddenly a duplication, and you're like, well, that's kind of, that kind of sucks. Like they're literally growing out of a pod. You're like, well, that definitely sucks. But in this case, it's like you get the eggs like shoved down your throat and have to like, go through that process.
Yeah.
It's far more terrifying.
It's just more active instead of like, whoa, that sucks. It's like, no, this is
and
actively
then you wake up thinking
violent,
fine, that everything's good, and then something bursts out of your chest and you're dead.
I mean, the only time that I've ever actually kind of experienced something like this, I hit a deer once. The deer went flying straight up in the air, and my adrenaline was pumping so much, I convinced myself that I didn't actually hit a deer, like that didn't happen. And I spent what seemed like several minutes just sitting there catching my breath, like what the hell did happen if I didn't hit a deer? But the deer went straight up in the air. That's impossible. It didn't come down. And what's going on? And then finally the deer just comes out and hits, and I'm like, oh, adrenaline.
Fight or flight.
You know what I have to say to you about that? Get out!
But the whole thing is that kind of denial of something terrible happening is very much like after the facehugger comes off your face.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to pivot right now, but I think we should go back to this deer story. Were you under the influence of any narcotics at the time?
No, it was in the middle of the day. I was
Tommy Boy
a
moment.
very suburban place outside of DC.
Were you singing along to the Carpenters?
No, it was just I literally was like just off a freeway. Like you could see the freeway from where I was at.
Yeah.
And this deer comes out of nowhere as I'm like trying to make sure that I can make a safe turn.
Better to have it during the day than at night.
Yeah. No, but then
was the deer in fact a homeless man? Are you telling the story of that time?
No, because the cops showed up and shot it. So cops don't usually shoot homeless people on the side of the street.
Isn't this the plot for Thinner? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted some clarification there. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna play the second clip.
I have no further questions.
Oh, great.
That I introed of Andy hitting this deer.
Yes, please.
No, this is talking about testing the queen, and I found this.
At least I wasn't eating spaghetti while I was here.
Queen.
One does not simply test the queen, but apparently they did.
There was no conversation to involve H.R. Giger. He had already designed the core creatures from the original Alien. The only thing that wasn't designed from Alien was the Queen Alien. Jim had designed that.
Stan and Jim sort of sequestered themselves off, and they tried different approaches to how to put people inside suits facing the wrong direction, so that the knee joints operated backwards, two guys back to back, one guy laying on his chest, one guy laying on his back, and they literally had a design battle going back and forth, trying to not one-up each other, but to advance each other's ideas, take the good points and run with it.
The coolest thing was to go to the first full-scale mock-up just to get an idea of the size of it, and that was done with the quickest techniques ever of just grabbing foam rubber, painting some of it, wrapping the rest of it in black polypropylene garbage bags. There were a big pair of these monster hands that Stan had been developing for another film that were reproduced in foam rubber. And we had two stuntmen come over, and they were hung from a crane, and we wrapped them all up and added legs and big puppeteering rods on those legs, and we shot video and stills of that test. And the idea there was to see what the total mobility was of this thing.
Crane, raise up. All right, bob the crane up and down. Just bob it up and down. Not so much, just a little bit, like it's shifting its weight. Okay, try to keep them palms down. There we go. Okay, spread the arms out as wide as you can go. Fix his face there. Okay, pivot.
Two men hanging from a crane, each of them with their arms, big long extensions, legs that were operated by control rods. And the result was, I mean, you look at it and it is what it is. It's cut foam and it's plastic trash bags, but it made an impression. It definitely made an impression and showed that it was the size, the relationship, and the technique was going to work.
Okay, that's a cut.
That was as far as we took it here in the States. And when we got to London and set up shop over there, that's when the final work on the full-size Queen began, which started with measurements, life cast, sculptures, and all of that.
Very cool.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. They didn't include, our good friend HR in this, though.
I think it makes sense though. I mean, he'd done like the like initial design work of everything and given like the aesthetic, and then the rest of that team was plenty talented. They were able to like take that and run with it and create something really cool.
Have a good baseline.
Not to make the argument, because one of the things I was saying in the when we talked about Alien, I brought up that like Giger was a artist, and Stan Winston, you could argue, is a artist of special effects. I mean, his movies are phenomenal from The Thing all the way to
pretty consistently rad. Yeah.
No. So I'm trying not to knock him because he's not an artist in the same way, but he's not but he is an artist in a particular way, and not every special effects person is at that caliber. So I would typically, want to say like, yes, normally I'd be like, yeah, bring back the original guy because he knows what he's doing. But in this case, Stan Winston,
he knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
this is
knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
it's very different.
People, like if you go from somebody who's like, doing one movie like Giger versus like saying bringing in like Jim Henson Productions for instance, because they also know what they're doing. Like
wait, can you imagine Jim Henson? Like Jim Henson's
Aliens?
Muppet Aliens, let's go. It's not too late, is it?
Would have been a little more like Labyrinth, I suppose.
Aliens, all gonzo.
Oh man, I can't wait for Frank Oz to voice the Queen.
No, but I think that I had this thought tonight watching it, and the first movie, obviously, we talked about this last time, is kind of like a slasher movie, right? Like there's one alien, it's stalking them, it's killing everybody one by one. It's essentially like Halloween, but like an alien version of that. I mean, you guys put it perfectly. This one's like a zombie movie. Like they're crawling through the walls, they're doing everything. So it's interesting to have these two, I think, subgenres that they're both kind of like inspired by, I guess, or like creating, and I found that fascinating about this movie.
Yeah,
but it also calls for a different art direction, or a different.
Like, so I'll go back to what I said, right? That I think that this is like one of the definitional action movies, and especially in a genre that we now think of as like laden with tropes. Like Aliens can help create that, and in a way that we didn't necessarily realize at the time. Like, think of the scene where like the aliens are there, they're on radar. I don't see anything, man. I don't see anything. It's like, oh, they're above us. Like, it's such a small thing. By the time you're like,
like, oh shit, how they get through there? They're smart. They have intelligence.
Yeah.
And asking these questions to yourself too.
Walk around and find out.
Asking these questions to yourself too, like, are they inside of them? Like, is the alien going to burst out of them? Is it like underneath them? Like, there's so many. Because as I said, like, I watched this for the first time, I think, or at least the first Alien I watched as a kid. Like, I don't like. So I was like watching it as if I'd watched it for the first time, and like thinking to myself, like, where are they gonna, like, are they gonna find out that, like, are all of them gonna chest burst at the same time, like, or are the aliens gonna come through, like, is there a grate that nobody's looking at, like, or like I don't know, there's just so many possible places, so your brain's something kind of.
And that's the one scene that I remember that sticks out when I like growing up and watching it for the first time, is because the music as well, they're going up and it's like they're crawling up and I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, I'm like, ask him. I'm like, Pop, how do they know to do this? He's like, just get back to your math work. You're not supposed to be watching this. I can't help it. It's so entertaining.
Can't help it. It's so good.
Yep.
My dear
It's a
boy,
brilliant-
do you ask a bird how it flies or a fish how it swims? No, sir, you don't. They do it because they were born to do it. I don't know. That was my. I was listening
Parasitic
to
aliens. That's all they know. They don't know any better, man.
They don't know any better, man. Erica, what do you think about that?
What do I think about
Any of that?
I don't know. I think I agree. But I just love the. I don't know. I think this movie contributed to me liking action movies, where I didn't really expect that to be a genre that I would normally be into. But no, I whatever brought James Cameron the idea to like mingle those, like interweave the action into the sci-fi with this story, like support it. I like it.
Because this is like
And it
one
makes
of
it
your
stand
favorite.
out from the original too, which I think made
Yeah,
it.
you had to make a movie titled Aliens.
Yeah.
For sure, as a sequel.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
although I will say for booking purposes, nightmare. Because we're going back because we're doing both the movies, right? And like remembering who was on what was not easy. You know, is it Alien or Aliens? And Forrest one, but I think you say like, why don't they just call it Alien 2? And the answer is
it makes it confusing. Like, no, but like now it's like, all right, it's there's a bunch of them, but like,
Well, I think there's
you know,
Alien
it's
3,
still-
Alien Resurrection, which I mean, in my opinion, that's
technically Alien 3 is Alien cubed.
Alien cubed.
Alien to the
That's when
third
things
power.
start to kind of go downhill for the franchise, in my opinion. But
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like they didn't slouch on directors either, because like David Fincher did the third one. I forget the French guy who did the fourth one, but
The guy who did City of Lost Children.
he's fantastic. And Delicatessen, which I love.
I love Delicatessen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, the thing-
I like all those
I love
movies
that.
better than the Alien movie.
Yeah, but I think part of the problem was the fact that the studio was basically acting as translator. So he's just like,
Yeah.
Jacques Cousteau, and they're like, yeah, no, he's saying he really wants to. We're gonna do a dog this time. Like, no, that was an Alien 3. No, never mind.
So the Alien Resurrection was directed by the same guy who did Amelie.
Yes.
Okay.
He did do Amelie. That's right. Wow, what a contrast.
No,
I feel like his name is like right
there.
there. I did not think of it.
Remember when that goofy ass white alien was like leaving gnomes around? Yeah, that was great.
Well, the thing that makes sense about the transition between these two movies is that obviously there's like a shitload of eggs in Alien, and they like end up,
I think that was the subtitle in Japanese is a shitload of eggs, by the way. But it's in
No, but, like-
Japanese, so it sounds cooler.
But
I
like,
mean-
so they bring one, the face hugger jumps out and they have one alien kind of chasing them around the ship. And then in this movie, kind of they're just on the planet and it's like, oh well, what is this planet like? Like, you know what I mean? Like
they would have to have
does it-
aliens.
does it like the same movies I do? What is this planet like? Like what happens when all of this stuff is happening and you kind of stay on the planet? Like you colonize the planet. Like does this continue? And there's all these different questions that you can have based on the fact that the first movie, like they end up kind of taking one sample home with them.
Yep.
Rather than kind of, confronting the queen hive in her nest.
It feels like every single time I go on Twitter and hashtag K-Hive somebody, and I'm taking on the Yas Queen.
Yeah.
I gotta get the flamethrower.
They've been awfully quiet these days. Anyway, can we talk about the heart of this movie, like the relationship between Ripley and Newt?
I'm shocked it's taken us almost an hour to do so. Please do.
Yeah, I mean that. Well, we had to do all the pre-production stuff.
We had to fit in all the weird stories of Andy hitting animals. So, or not.
Don't forget
or
the
maybe not
spaghetti.
hitting animals.
I mean, like
Also the spaghetti.
she takes in like a motherly role. Like she knows, and she didn't have to, but she almost immediately does it because she knows what it's like with these aliens and like how terrifying they are. And so it's just incredible to see her have a motherly, very guardian, protecting relationship with this innocent child who could become a victim.
We know she has her own daughter, but we don't see her, in the original and in this movie up to that point. We don't really see her being super vulnerable and like building, tight emotional connections with anybody. So
yeah,
it definitely stands out.
And it is more like as you know, you're right. It is more like a slasher movie that way, the first one. Whereas this one, I feel like it's like you get a little more insight into who Ripley is as a person, while also getting a lot of insight in how absolutely screwed up the future space capitalism is.
Yeah.
Like in a real intrinsic and like unimpeachable way of like, no, these guys fucking suck.
This is the actress who played Newt. Well, it starts with Galen Hurd, but this is the actress who played Newt, talking about her relationship with Sigourney Weaver, who apparently she developed a nice bromance with throughout the filming of this.
I love that.
She and I really bonded because everyone left us, and we used to always joke and say we were the orphans nobody wanted. We were left there. They did all the parts that everyone was there, and then they left, and we did all of our parts for a couple months after that. And she would do different things with me, and like our dressing rooms were right next door to each other. And her husband would come and visit every once in a while. I knew she would be sad when he left, and so I'd bring her flowers to work. For me, it wasn't as big a deal. I just didn't see my family every single day. I just would see them on the weekends. And sometimes my brother was allowed to have off of school for a week, and he'd come up and spend time on the set.
There was an incredible bond by the end of the film between Sigourney and Carrie, especially given that Carrie had no experience as an actor prior to doing Aliens. She hadn't even, from my recollection, appeared in a school play. And yet she was so perfect as Newt.
I remember one scene, and it was at the beginning when Sigourney first found me, and I'm in my little nest, as they called it, and I had all this stuff around me and everything. And that was the only scene. I remember Chris was on set at the time, and James Cameron would not let my brother or my mom anywhere near it because my mom was always there where I could see her, and she wasn't allowed to be there because I had to feel like I had no one. And it was amazing how I did feel that way, just because knowing my mom wasn't just right there. They were offset, and they were allowed to come on after that. But I remember I was kind of upset.
Be all right now.
Easy. The cocoon part, that was probably one of the most tedious parts of filming that we had. It was all made out of fiberglass, and we had to do everything except the actual breaking apart of it over and over and over again. And all they had was this little tiny hole, and I'd have to crawl through the hole. And there was like a wooden stool covered with the fiberglass, and I'd have to sit on that. And I couldn't actually rest myself, like my feet, on any part of it because it might break it, and they couldn't redo it again exactly how it was. So I'd have to sit there, and then I'd crawl out, and that took days, and with all the slime, which took forever to clean off. It was horrible. And then Sigourney, when she actually had to rip it off, she had to do it just right so that we got it done right the first time, and she cut her hands all up with the fiberglass and everything. So it was really bad.
Grab onto me. Hold on. No! God! No!
That was another scene that kind of lasted forever. Actually, going down the chute part was the coolest. They had made a sign, and they hung it on the chute that said, adults 1 pound, children 50p. And I would love just when I'd hang up the top, and then I'd get to go down. It was this huge, like 3-story chute, and it had like a little bend in it and had a big old mat at the bottom. So sometimes I would kind of mess up a little bit on purpose so that I could go down and come right back up and try it again.
I totally do that.
That's so funny.
It sounded like she had a lot of fun on set.
Yeah.
Isn't this the only movie that she did?
Yep.
How did she get a role in a major movie without having done any kind of acting before?
Just cute looking kid, I guess.
I mean, she is cute. I'll give her that.
Her parents knew somebody.
It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. But like, it sounded like she had a lot of fun. And I remember that scene. I didn't know they used fiberglass for that. Like, damn.
That's wild. Yeah, the fiberglass will.
Can't believe they would do that.
You up. Like,
Yeah.
to be clear, for those that for those of us that are the professional managerial class that don't work with their hands, no, like
Yeah.
it will screw you up, man. Like that's
Yeah.
fiberglasses.
Yeah.
Like that causes like all kinds of problems.
Yeah. But it's nice that she had really fond memories of being on set. Like, no, like doesn't seem like she has any regrets.
Yeah, which is impressive because like the rest of the crew had problems with Cameron because he was used to doing the guerrilla style filmmaking that he used for Terminator and Piranha 2 for this, and this was like a
Piranha 2.
nice studio.
The definitional Piranha 2. Yes.
Well, I mean that was
sorry,
his
Eddie.
previous
I should,
movie. It's just, you know,
my disdain for Piranha 2 interrupted your point. Please continue.
But no, it was you know, Cameron was used to doing this guerrilla style filmmaking, and so he's putting the crew through like 12-hour days.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear that the actors actually had a good time, especially the young ones.
Somebody did.
Yeah. Because they actually had to like stop production because people were mad at him for like what he was putting them through, which understandable, but like, you know,
yeah, legit.
I wonder what they think about what's going on nowadays.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah,
no joke at all. So,
Another thing.
do we like the Alien Queen as like, which I now feel like everybody's like, oh yeah, the Alien Queen, duh, everyone knows the Alien Queen, but this is the first time that you're like, oh, there isn't just like the aliens, there's like
a queen, a
there's
mother,
like the queen who is like
big bad
20
bitch.
times bigger, and like, you know, and ants and bees, and a lot of times in the insect kingdom, like, yeah, that's the one that like you don't fuck with, and also everyone will come after you as well. So I mean, do we think that works? Like, Kristina, what do you think? We'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think it works because, like, again, you had to expand on the fact that there was more than one aliens. Where did they come from? But also too, I've always been confused by the process, the metamorphosis. I'm like, so there's face huggers, and then there's also ones like, that are eggs, that are this, that are that. So I always got confused by like the life cycle of these aliens. So knowing that
like, was it rolling? Sorry to interrupt, but like royal jelly, like right? That's what they do with bees. How you become a queen is you have the royal jelly. Like,
I think so.
You know,
but like it took me like it's some like deep like research to like figure out like why is there a queen? How come there's eggs, and yet the eggs become face huggers, and then the face huggers lay eggs, and this and that, and I'm like, how does that even happen? But like, I like the fact that they included, you know, like a queen, because I mean that kind of becomes a reoccurring theme between the queen and Ripley in future, you know, movies.
Queen v. Queen.
Yes.
Indeed. Erica, how about you?
Queen A.
I agree. I also, for a long time, I guess I just didn't think about it that hard, but I also wasn't really sure, like, how does this life cycle work? It kind of reminds me of like how ants function, but then there's like an extra step for the gestation, you know, like they've like enhanced how ants work, how ant colonies work, but I don't know.
Do you think it's like the caterpillar, butterfly, like was it the moth and the other one, like like, you know, a cocoon chrysalis, but like instead of cocoon or chrysalis is
sure,
dude's chest.
So it's kind of an amalgamation, but
what's all the cool insect stuff we can steal? All right.
But I'm trying to think of like parasitic bugs that I can't, well, I guess termites, but those aren't parasitic to humans, they're just a problem.
There are parasites for insects
that have queens in their
well, there's that one that like takes over like I guess actual mind control. Was it Bonnie talking about that? Somebody's talking about that.
I think that was a mold though.
If you watch Legion,
right, it is mold, yes.
There was a scene.
All roads back to Legion, Kristina.
Yes, when there was a scene where Lenny's telling David about this fungus that infects ants, it controls their central nervous system and then comes bursting out of their head like a branch, and it takes over the ant, but it also kills them, and gets more ants. When people say love, that's what I think of.
Now with Andy, it's all roads lead back to Stargate, so it's okay to have an all roads lead back to. We established that last episode.
Do I need to watch that before the next one?
No.
Stargate. I still haven't seen it.
The movie or the show?
Either. I'm
Watch
behind.
the movie, skip the show.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the show, but like that's a whole other.
There's better shows that do that now. Like it's,
Yeah.
It was and
goddamn, we're talking about Stargate. Fuck.
Yeah. You kept it up, man. You brought it up. It's your fault. But I was just gonna say quickly, it was a hole where Star Trek didn't exist, where we had Stargate. So that was the beauty of it. And that's really what Stargate is like if you didn't have Star Trek, it's something else to watch. There you go. That's it. That's the end of my.
So I was like the fact that with Aliens, this is what I call there's a special echelon of films or movies or anything really where everything you need to know is in the title. And what I think of is the Planet of the Apes phenomenon. Yeah. Hey, what's this movie about? Aliens. And like the pluralization is very important because let's remember, first movie ostensibly a slasher movie, one scary as hell alien stuck in a spaceship with them. Now it's like there's a bunch of them. Again, going back to the zombie movie thing. And I really kind of want to revisit that a little bit, like, Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Night of the Living Dead.
No, there's more of them.
Yeah, like the fact that, look, just one of these suckers, took out this entire crew, right? So the fact that there's like, dozens, hundreds of them is like, oh yeah. So
an entire developed colony. Yeah.
Yeah. They're fucked.
What's
Well, they got Ripley, so they're good. You just have to listen to her.
Right. She's nuking from space. She's 100% right. Get the fuck out of there, nuking from space.
It's like listen to women. Believe women. There's some Me Too messaging in this movie.
You're right, but I mean that character was written for a male actor originally, which I find really interesting. Sure. But I'm glad they kept that good vibe going where she was like just a regular person and didn't like fit into like that female stereotype in any way.
like not truly feminine or not truly even masculine, just regular woman. And which I like the fact that they didn't really go heavy on with like gender roles. I mean, there was sexism because obviously there still would be sexism in the future.
And there was sexism in the first movie. Let's be honest.
Yep. Very heavily on the sexism and but just listen to Ripley. She knows, but also too with Sigourney Weaver. I can't. Am I the only one who sees her as Ripley? Like when I see her in like other movies,
like she's in like a rom-com. She's Ripley. Forget it.
Yeah, when she's playing like an evil comedic character in Vamps, I'm like Ripley.
I mean, there's that great Netflix show. It's a French show called Call My Agent. I love it, and Sigourney Weaver actually has a pretty big part in it as herself, and I still see her as Ripley, even though she's playing herself in a show ostensibly about actors and their agents. And I'm like, no, it's Ripley.
Yeah,
I just love her so much.
Good.
Yeah, like even in the Avatar, it's Ripley. It's Ripley.
The Defenders.
Oh, I forgot she was in that.
I forgot Avatar existed. I was happy for a minute.
She did this one like comedy with like Ray Liotta, which bombed, and I'm like, Ripley. What are you doing? You're playing a con artist?
What did you think of Dave then?
You can tell she tries to break away from playing Ripley, but I'm sorry, Sigourney, if you ever see this, you are Ripley. Like
Ghostbusters, though, I think is probably the one film where she kind of did break away from Ripley.
Yeah. That's probably the only out of everything she's ever done. Ghostbusters.
But, I mean, to be typecast for like a role that like defined a type of role.
Yeah.
Because think about what was it, Dawn of the Dead, Andy, that we look at the features and they basically were talking about how Romero was kind of atoning a little bit for Night of the Living Dead for like making Barbara just like, kind of like this weak one-dimensional character. And then they started talking about like basically being like in a post-Ripley world. Right. And like that like he wanted, one of the atonements he wanted to do was make a character that was well-rounded.
Well, no, it was before Ripley.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was the scene.
Yeah.
But before Ripley. So,
And this is my closing thoughts of Alien, that I said there was a pre-Ripley and a post-Ripley world for film. And I still stand by that assessment because I think that as far as protagonist goes, I mean, to me, she's up there with like Indiana Jones or something.
Yeah.
Right? Where you think of like
I don't.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't want to
I was gonna say, look
say,
at
like,
Mila
I don't
Jovovich and all
see
those
how-
like Resident Evil. She's like a cut rate Ripley, right?
Yeah, like it's very
But she'll
probably
always
one-
be Lulu.
That's
Yeah,
we have Ripley at home.
yeah,
Mila
one of
Jovovich.
the probably like one of the most popular female characters in cinema.
Yeah. I don't think there could be. I don't think there's a way to have a world post Ripley that isn't influenced by that character, by that actress.
I think without Sigourney, I don't think that role wouldn't have been as impactful if it had been for her portrayal.
I don't think we would care. I think it would be something weird.
I don't know. You know who was they were also considering for the role, but she couldn't do it because something personal happened and she couldn't. She emotionally wasn't there.
Rosanna Arquette?
No. Oh shoot! I always forget her name.
Veronica Cartwright, who was in the first movie, she was supposed to play Ripley, but
I
like her. Yeah, no,
really?
They were between.
But they switched at the last minute.
They wanted to go with was it Glenn Close? I think it was
Glenn Close.
Close.
Oh, that would have been pretty good, I think.
It was if it was not Glenn Close, it's one of those type of actresses in that,
okay.
kind of
Okay, I'm gonna look this up right now.
I always
gotta see
screw it
Glenn
up
Close doing it, though.
because I always get Glenn Close confused with somebody else.
Yeah.
And I'll always say one or the other name, and usually I'm right because it's like Oscar winning women in movies, like you know, who's always doing Oscar bait basically. It's either Glenn Close or another person. Meryl
Yeah, I was gonna say that's Meryl Streep is what comes.
It might have been Meryl Streep, you know, but like
No, I don't think
it was Meryl Streep.
Okay.
I don't think I would have liked her as much.
Oh,
in
you know
that.
what? Yeah, didn't that come up in Alien? Yeah.
Yeah, which would have been a very
She
interesting.
beat out Sigourney beat out Meryl Streep. Like if you could beat out Meryl Streep,
Well, no,
like,
they wanted to go with Meryl Streep, but
Yeah.
she
They
had a
knew each
personal-
other, right? Like there was like a
Yeah.
personal connection.
There was like a
Yeah.
roommates or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They were
But
roommates?
like,
I see Meryl Streep playing a
was
role
going
like
for
that.
something. She could have done it. I think she's good enough, but I don't think it wouldn't have been as good as Sigourney Weaver. Like
Yeah.
Do you think Meryl Streep might have been good enough? You think? Okay.
She probably. I mean, we wouldn't have Sigourney Weaver to compare it to if they had Meryl Streep and she hadn't had that conflict.
Yeah.
So I'm sure she would have done a great job in her own right, but
Now-
I just
now
feel like
I'm
Sigourney
wondering
Weaver was
what-
just such a perfect choice.
Now I'm wondering what would have been if Veronica Cartwright was Ripley in the original.
Absolutely.
Or they actually hired a trans woman for Lambert in the original. Like they retconned in Aliens, which we only found out because of the 4K edition.
Yeah.
If you
Oh,
pause
that's
on the screen where they're showing the bios, you know, in the 4K edition, you can actually read them, and it actually said that you know she's a Lambert is a trans woman. So
According to the script.
according to what we see on screen.
Oh.
Yeah, so the files they show the files on
Huh.
screen, and they're like in the background of the scene where Ripley's being interrogated by the company.
Yeah.
I
didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
It's a recent
Revelation.
revelation.
You're doing so
Revelation.
great.
But only because of the 4K release. Like nobody had noticed it before the 4K release. People started pausing it to read the bios and like, oh wait, really, Lambert?
The more you know.
I dig that.
Small point with this movie. I like the fact that so they're, you know, running all around in space, right? But they have to go into suspended animation. Like that's a thing. And suspended animation like factors in big time. Right? Like there's, you know, in this case it's been 57 years since the first movie. But, you know, for Ripley it literally just happened. And that mode of travel, I think that we've been, and I adore Star Trek, but I think we've been spoiled by Star Trek, and everyone just, you know, was zipping all around, like doing this. That like, yeah, space travel was like long and boring, and I really like, and Stargate. God damn it! But with the technology,
Can you expound upon that, Andrew?
With the technologies as we have them, it would be more like Alien than or that Fakakta Chris Pratt movie where he wakes up what's her face and
Guardians of the Galaxy.
No, different.
Well, that would have been cool.
There's a space
know,
movie
I
where
can't
like
keep up
wakes
with
up
him.
Jennifer Lawrence or something, and like it's a whole. I don't know.
Yeah, there's honestly they should re-edit that movie where like they cut out like the first 45 minutes and then like have that be like a mystery. It's not making
That'd be a better film for sure.
Yeah. Like the movie. There's a good movie in there. It's just we didn't get it.
Yeah. It's just that it's
Give us the Snyder
he's
cut.
not the hero. But the idea, and they lean into it like with the whole like, oh, the egg is in the person who's sleeping, right? And then like, we're eventually going to be able to get this asset, like, when the ship returns. But I like the fact that, because think about it this way. If this is like this space like libertarian utopia like Elon Musk world that we're thinking of, we're never gonna go around to like hyperdrives and stuff like that. People are gonna be still trying to like profiteer off of like mundane things. So I think that makes it cooler in a way, because it's like, fuck, it probably would be more like that.
It would be like the Queen song 39.
Yeah, and their ships are like aircraft carriers, aren't they? Like, aren't they in like an enormous ship?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And
they didn't try to make that go at light speed.
And I think without it being overtly dystopian, other than the fact that it's like a capitalist hellscape where people will profiteer off of an invasive alien species that will literally end your civilization, on that minor point, I feel like it's just like, oh no, these are just people trying to like get by, which I think is much more identifiable for people in today's society.
I wonder if people be like, we'll defend the aliens. I'm like, well, yeah, in a way, because we're kind of disrupting their thing.
We're disrupting their ecosystem, man.
Yeah.
I like James Cameron's point in that clip we watched about the blue collar like folks in like maybe this doesn't count as post-apocalyptic, but like space age or like futuristic things. Like it was a new kind of idea to show like people who are just out at their jobs at work.
It's like it's not that it's dystopian, it's the fact that these are just people hustling. They're working class people.
It's like going to war. You have no choice.
Yes.
Yeah. They signed up 3-year contract.
They're not good enough for college.
They're not going to see
military
their families.
Straighten them up.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I heard you try to put space truckers in there, Andrew. How dare you? First of all. So anyway, I think that's notable in the fact that like slow space travel, like there's a lot more to explore there, because it enters in new types of stories to be told that I think the franchise does well, even when the other movies that I am not as much of a fan of doesn't quite do well. And then also the fact that like it's working class people in space. Are they being exploited? Fuck yeah, they are. Working class people are usually being exploited.
Jeff Bezos, what's up?
Exactly. Space Amazon.
Well, if the corporation's willing to destroy people's lives in order to get the alien technology they want, I'm sure they're not like making good contracts for their workers either.
Well, but the thing is, there's a monopoly, right? Where else are you going to go? It's Weyland-Yutani or nothing.
Exactly.
So I think.
So where else do they have to turn? You got them by the balls.
It's a monopoly thing as well, which is funny because you don't see that much about monopolies in space. It's either we move past that.
Well,
or
I mean,
like
you do in Cyberpunk.
I still can't believe they named it Space Force. Like,
back to Space Force. Okay.
I'm sorry, but like they're trying to. I mean, in a way, they're trying to colonize these planets and get this alien venom and whatever. But it's like, come on, like, did you guys hear that there are extraterrestrial life in Venus's clouds? Like, I'm like, someone's gonna try to get whatever that is.
Right.
Like, we're learning about extraterrestrial life happening or other like Earth-like planets. And I'm like, this is all happening too fast. But knowing how the time continuum is, it's going to take like 500 years to get there. So we're good.
Well, and I think so. And since we're talking about, since we're also talking about like space corporatism and whatnot, I think the fact that the company, like in the CIA thing, I don't see that as much as like corporate espionage, but corporate espionage with full on monopolistic concerns. Like, what happens when the only corporate espionage is against basically your consumers? Things along those lines. Like, it's not even that it's like nefarious or like that's actually the worst thing about it, is that it's like, no, they're just trying to make more money. That's what they do. It's like, why do the aliens do what they do? Well, the aliens do what they do because that's their instinct. Well, the instinct of a corporation is to serve the interests of the shareholders and to make a profit.
They're just trying to survive, man.
Yeah. The aliens are just trying to live their lives and the humans are getting in the way.
Leave the aliens alone. If you know, like these humans, they know well what those aliens are capable of, and they don't care. And aliens are like, all right. We're gonna imprint. We're gonna sit on some faces and go with this thing.
Yeah.
Well, she has that quote in the movie where she's like, who are the real villains? Like, sure, they're terrifying aliens, but like, you know, at least they're not fucking each other over for the bottom line. You know what I mean? Like that's like that's a crazy quote to be in a movie like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
The
it's
lesser of two evils.
You know, it's a late 80s science fiction movie that not only defined the action genre, but also is like bringing up those kinds of questions, just like RoboCop, just like, you know, Wall Street happened a year after this. You know, think about the fact that, you know, people only think of like the greed is good line, sure, but think about Charlie Sheen literally basically catfishing his dad into like fucking over his union, like his life's work, right? Like that's what was in the zeitgeist at this time.
Yeah,
I can't believe I'm bringing up these points. By the way, this is not normal. I know we just crack wise and, you know, bust that.
Yeah, but there's connections to all this.
It's all connected, people.
Yeah,
Wake up,
you
people.
know, Cameron's follow-up film was you know, a more environmental film with Abyss. So like, you know, he kind of continued with this not trusting, although that was more not trusting government, but was a public-private
but it all ties in together. There's this
but yeah, it's the
antitrust
same,
theme.
and a lot of it kind of came out of cyberpunk. I mean, if anybody's read oh, now I'm going to blank on the dude's name.
Now I'm trying to think what the political themes for Titanic are. Abandon the upper class. You could be fine being working class girl on your own after meeting a dude. Fall in love with him.
I like that in the first movie, she's with other blue collar workers, right, on that ship, and she's the only one who makes it. And then in the second one, she's got military police, like Marines, with her, and they don't make it either.
Yeah,
but she still makes it, and the kid, which is impressive.
Smart,
and most of the robot. Not all of them, but most of them.
The robot. Most of the robot did indeed make it in this movie. Yes.
Which I just love the fact that
DJ, most of the robot. Yes.
that Lance Hendrickson's in this movie because James Cameron really wanted to cast him as the Terminator, and couldn't. So he wanted to give him a good role, other than that small role that he had in Terminator. Because Lance Hendrickson's great. You know, shout out to Renee Ruin for your conquest. You know, loves for the love of Lance Hendrickson. So, you know, just shout out to her since she's not here. And Lance Hendrickson, he's not here either.
Who's also not here. Let's just shout out all the people.
They're out there doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but another movie that this reminds me of that Andy we talked
Near
about.
Dark. He's in Near Dark too. That's what Bigelow.
Another movie that Aliens reminds me of. You know,
Stargate.
Only a few years later is Total Recall, because you know they have colonization of another planet as the central tenet with an evil company that's kind of in charge of that. Like it's so talking about colonization,
which was written by the guy who wrote Alien.
Yeah,
you know, Dan O'Bannon.
Connecting.
Yeah, so it's all
okay. I was
Philip K. Dick wrote the short story, but Dan O'Bannon.
Alien or Alien.
I had a fun time in Austin the day I met up with David Griscom, because we were doing Total Recall as our movie episode. So I ended up going back to an Airbnb doing that. And then the day I met up with David Griscom, I was listening to the audiobook of that short story. It's like only 3 hours. It was a fire audiobook, but it was fun. I took this electric scooter because they had electric scooters everywhere in Austin, and I was just like scooting around Austin, like listening to that.
Listening to We Can Remember It For You wholesale, like a boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Philip K. Dick definitely was a proto cyberpunk writer. A lot of them were inspired by him, so
sure.
It makes perfect sense.
You know, Philip K. Dick fans are called
dickheads.
No.
Doug
Yes.
Lean. No.
Like Erica's reaction. Oh no.
I knew it was coming. I could feel it.
What,
This is what happens when you bring me on.
Yeah. What? I don't know. What are they called?
That's the dickheads.
Oh, okay. That was it. Okay.
Well, Harry Potter fans are called,
Potheads.
Yeah, and Grateful Dead fans are called Deadheads.
And Ben Burgess fans are called give heads.
By the way, so I found out while I was.
What are Stargate fans called? Starheads? Whatever.
I have no clue.
Because they're all getting no, I like Stargate.
No, hey, I actually hung out with people who like built an actual Stargate, like not a working one, but like a replica one.
Maybe that's where the deer went.
The deer went to the Stargate. No, and they dress up and they have their own like unit, like they're like SG 44 or something like that, and
unit.
It's weird, but it's a thing. So shout out to my Stargate fans.
Shout out to those people specifically. Yes, why not?
I'm glad you got that in.
Yeah, I was
That's
worried
really
we were gonna
important.
make it.
All right, so I have two more clips I wanted to play before we end this. The first one, I'll play them in order. Designing the face hugger. So I wanted to talk about those two things before we jump to Conan's letterbox things, because I like talking about the design elements in movies like this. I think it's a fascinating part of the film design process.
Alien was one of the most shocking and wonderful effects in film history. We had to repeat it, but we had to do something a little different.
I actually endeavored on the second picture to make it even less gory than the first one, because I think the chest burster scene is pretty gory in and of itself. Although the number of seconds of gore, say, throughout the film is not that great. But I actually tried to pull back even more from that, because I figured, okay, the first film told you what could happen. We don't have to revel in it.
The chest burster is representative of all of the creature effects in the films, that they have all changed slightly. And what you hope you do is you're making it more specific to the story, and that you're making improvements without destroying the original designs of these creatures, which are really just great designs.
We had a copy of the original chest burster from the first film, and the thing that we were noticing in the original sculpture was there was an indication that there were to be little arms on the thing, and I wasn't really aware of them in the film.
Jim did want to add arms to it. He wanted it to look like the hands were helping free itself, pushing itself out. I think he felt that the one in the first one was just a little too larval and a little too disconnected from what it ultimately will become.
We built two chest bursters, one of which had 3 joints in the waist so that it could do a curling effect as it burst through the chest. And that was like a big punching ram that could come through it was an actress with her body backed away from the
on a
set,
slant board,
so that there was a fake prop coming down from her armpits forward.
False body,
sort of like body up through the table, kind of a magician's gag. And so when the first chest burster came through, we were able to literally punch through like a punching rod and come through a latex skin and a distressed T-shirt that she was wearing, with a lot more energy than even in the John Hurt chest burst from the first film. In continuing that effect, we built
then it was a cut, and then the articulated puppet went inside.
And the articulate puppet was multiple layers of vertebrae that had 4 directions of universally organic motion, as well as small rods for the hands. So they had the praying mantis folds and a much wider jaw actuation so that the mouth could open even further, because it had to be burnt.
Almost like a full tentacle. Didn't Steve Norton do
Yes.
that as well?
Yeah,
I think Steve did that. And then we had a puppet replica of the actress after it's come out and she's dead, that fit into the cocoon so that they could hit it with a flamethrower. So that was actually burnt. And if I remember right, the hero puppet
was thrashing a mile a minute.
It just was like,
Burn, baby.
okay, hopefully we got this, because we're about to burn it right now.
You don't create fear with gore. You create disgust. It's a whole different emotion. And I think that certainly for me, the emphasis on the second picture was less on horror and more on terror. We wanted people to experience the fear and the suspense.
That's right.
Yep.
I have my own personal chest burster with me right now, by the way.
Oh, God damn it. Where are my cats at?
Somebody is a little lonely right now, so
Oh.
got some lap time going on.
But like it's interesting though, right? Because the most iconic scene in the original Alien is the chest burster scene. Like I don't, that's the scene I think that's completely lived on for, longer than any other scene probably ever will from that movie.
I mean, it's lampooned in Spaceballs. We start saying, "Hello, my baby. Hello, my daughter."
Yeah, that's one of the greatest. That's one of the greatest fucking moments in that movie. But as Bill Pullman told me that one time, it holds up. But no, but like, so it's fascinating. I think that kind of do it. Yes, and it's in a much more grotesque and kind of interesting way. I think this time with the woman literally like because they already know what kind of is like both the audience and I mean Sigourney Weaver kind of knows where this is going, and like but it's definitely fascinating that like they feel the need to kind of redo that in a much more in a much more kind of intricate and like I think you can kind of presume that that's what's about to happen, but like they kind of surprise you with it again in a different way, because the first one, the fact that it's such a muted scene before that happens and they're kind of just all hanging out and eating breakfast together and like
element of surprise.
Thinking everything's all right now.
Yeah, even the cast was not prepared for that scene. They were like, the reaction was real.
Motherfucker!
I heard they didn't prepare them for that so they could get really good reactions. Apparently it worked out nicely.
Apparently Bobby Wynant wasn't ready for that either, because she had that long complaint that we watched in the first version of this.
Yes, the queen.
Yes,
the real queen.
But no, but
careful,
so like
she might plant an egg in you, Conan. You'll have like little bobbies bursting from your chest.
Exactly. That's more horrifying than an actual alien, frankly.
I think it's interesting that James Cameron has the idea to create this, because he's like, listen, I love this movie. I could create a sequel. I could write the sequel. I feel like this is something I'm good at. And then he kind of creates this this follow up to that, like building up to the point, like building up to a very different movie where it's kind of like a zombie movie where they're all being chased by aliens throughout this entire like power plant, and they're kind of ready for it rather than kind of just being like a slasher film where it's an accident. I think that's really interesting to kind of recreate that moment, but like do it in such a way that in this movie I think it's a lot more almost grotesque and vicious, and like because she's just like suffering and she's saying kill me, and then you're like you're like, oh fuck, like this is really dark, and then all of a sudden it just bursts out of her chest and you're like, yeah, this is Aliens.
Yeah, what do you think you're getting into with the title?
Yeah, cute little puppies.
Exactly. It wasn't friends hanging out in space doing cool shit together, the movie.
Yeah.
And making a buck or two.
They weren't pivoting. Pivot. They probably should, since they were being chased by aliens.
Annie, that's probably the best visual gag with the most amount of effort to put into it and the lowest amount of on-screen time payoff. But I appreciate you doing it not once, but twice.
Well, Forrest didn't see it the last time, so we had to,
he's
get
all
him
busy.
Yeah.
Aliens.
There's more than one of them now.
Exactly.
Yes.
In the title. We know what
Now
we're
there's
in for.
two. Just kidding.
All right, so this is the other one on designing the face huggers themselves, which is a different process I think in this film than
those things are terrifying.
Yeah, than the original.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He's in prime purring from Jack Harkness right now, by the way.
Yeah, I heard that.
He's a loud purr. Purr? Sure.
That works.
We were going to the lab once, or whatever they called it, where they showed us the face huggers. And then as we were like looking at, the thing, they sort of set it off.
Just remember that was a blast to puppeteer that, because it was just such a base reaction. It's ever since you're a kid and you try to scare somebody to make them jump, and knowing that that's exactly what the point was for the audience, that was a lot of fun.
We had a puppet and an actuated puppet, but very difficult because it had to be controlled through water. So we had to really figure out how we could get all of these cables and everything hidden and not have everything leak out of the stasis tube at the same time.
The dissection scene from the first Alien film was literally a horseshoe crab with some oysters laid in the bottom and a little bit of extra latex rubber dressing on it. Shane built the dissection facehugger for the second film, and that was stomach tripe unrolled out to its honeycomb pattern.
Skin with silver paint
Chicken
on
skin.
it. Really weird.
And it was
horrible,
pinned, and
sticky
it was
stuff.
pinned out on a dissection board too. I mean, we had to put the thing in a refrigerator every night, and nobody would touch it except Shane. It was only because he had to.
And Lance. So Lance,
bring in that horrible thing.
Lance Hendrickson was really good with it. Yeah,
he was fun.
Oh, buddy, what is that you got there? Oh, wow, look at that. You know, and he'd get in there and start working.
Well, you know, we like actors, and the stuff that we make, you have to help them do their job too. So if you make it as real as possible, that gives them something to react to.
In order to create the illusion of these two facehuggers, which are now loose in that room, created a half dozen different forms of this particular creature so that it could have a performance and become a character. Didn't change the design, extended the design, changed what it could do as an actor.
What Jim really wanted was that proximity and the tactileness of it. So there were a few different pieces that we built for that.
We had two hero facehuggers, which had complete mobility of the fingers. It could crawl and reach and try and get at Newt and try and get at Ripley. Complete action, but operated literally by 6 or 7 puppeteers just to get all of those fingers doing everything they had to do. Huge bundle of cables. When Sigourney Weaver is holding it and fighting it away from her, there's a huge bundle of cables down her arm. She's creating a performance. Carrie's creating a performance. It's coming up over the table, trying to crawl out after her. And it's a very, very extensive animatronic cable-operated effect.
Probably the most complex of the pieces was the running facehugger. And that was the mechanism for that was built by Rick Lazzarini. It was a very clever mechanism. It was like a pull toy where there was a couple of pulleys that a cable would run through inside the body. You had another cable that as you pulled the creature along, the wheels of the pulleys would turn, which would activate cams that made the legs scuttle.
This thing looks like a fucking Alaskan king crab. But basically the wire is going to come from here straight, and from here probably come out about here that way, so that the tail angles down like this. It's going to come down like this more, and the wire will be over the tail, and the sucker will spin it around.
It was, in fact, low-tech, high-art, very interesting concept, and this little thing was running at you, running across the room, and it was virtually a pull toy.
And then in addition to that, Cameron did some very clever things with reverse photography mixed with forward movement. There's actually 3 different pieces to this shot when the creature runs out and stops, and then it leaps onto the leg of a table and then leaps right at the camera. And what that was the little pull toy facehugger running, stops, cut the camera, take that one out, place a floppy stunt facehugger on the table, and then we put a little eyelet in the ground where the little other running facehugger stopped, pull that back towards it, run that in reverse, cut the 2 together, and it looks like the creature runs up, stops, jumps onto the table leg. Then we place, for the last part of the shot, we placed the facehugger back on the table leg and yanked it directly towards camera. And when you cut those 3 pieces together, you see it run, jump, and leap at the camera. Those kind of in-camera tricks that I think Cameron was able to design and wrap his head around. A lot of directors fear that kind of thing because they don't have any experience. They're not, willing to take the chance. And Cameron dives in and says, we can make this work, and here's how. And it worked beautifully.
But he couldn't figure out getting Leo on that fucking door.
Mm-hmm. I got a bone. Like he could have fit.
Anyway, moving on.
But to go back to the facehugger thing,
moving on extravaganza.
It's how like that design, like the facehuggers have been like very, very popular and like reused throughout like other projects, like I mentioned earlier with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because those things are kind of terrifying. And I swear to God, it looks like a vulva.
and also a ball sack at the same time. So it's
Yep.
like it's amazing. There's all those things.
It intersects, you know.
And you know, the also the other thing too, as I mentioned before, Stan Winston is an artist, and the fact that he wasn't talking about like the technical aspect of it. He was talking about how he was trying to give a good performance of the puppets, and that's what makes him different from like a lot of other special effects guys.
They're cast members essentially. They are important characters that need to have a performance, and I mean, we've seen it, and in the 80s they did a lot of the practical stop motion puppeteering, so of course they had to make sure that these things felt and looked real and acted real. You can't do that with CGI. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's such impressive work. I mean, getting something that has like, 8 spiny legs to make it. I mean, and obviously like the camera cheats, I guess, if you want to call it whatever.
And the
where
noises
he's like,
too.
oh, we put it on there and then pulled it off, but then put it in reverse so it looked like it was leaping onto the thing. Like,
yeah,
it's
you
just
can't do that anymore. I don't know why.
impressive work.
You could still do it. It still will look good.
Do you think? What do you think the budget comparisons are, though? Like paying a team of people to create an entire alien colony, or CGIing it? I want to see the. I'm interested in the numbers.
I've heard that CGI is even more expensive for some reason.
Get that on Erica's desk by Monday, would you?
You're planning on making a film?
Me?
Yeah, is that what's going on? You're
I'd love
budgeting
to make
your
a
next
film. Yeah.
Yeah, asking for a friend, and the friend is
Yeah.
her.
I would love to.
She's
make a
gonna
film.
she's gonna kidnap Conan, and then she's gonna do Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends with Conan as the CGI frontman.
Great.
So she controls.
It'll be like Misery, except Conan's.
I love Misery.
Conan, you gotta CGI and some friends.
Bring the cat.
Conan Neutron and the CGI friends.
How about we
There you
make a CGI Conan Neutron, but it's Jack Harkness's head? I feel like that'd be more popular because people like cats.
We already got the green screen, so
Exactly.
We
I've
can
done
get
stupider
started.
things for less effect and less views.
Yeah. Do you have a suit with the little balls all over it, though?
Oh, he's got a ball suit.
He's got a gimp suit, but he doesn't like to talk about it.
They're called
Hey,
mocap balls, motion capture, please.
Hey,
Industry
Conan.
professionals talking.
Buddy, are you ready for your letterbox one-liners?
Please, let's get out of whatever this is. Yes. So
we've CGI'd you into the letterbox one-liners, and we're
CGI'd you next time. Be easier.
Oh no.
We'll fix it in
No.
post. Yeah. Are you introing or am I? We should figure this out.
No, well, I think this is your segment. You do better introing it than I do. I stumble over my words, so
Yeah, you should totally make a song and have Forrest put together a video. So then we can just play that and then go right into it.
Letterboxd, party on.
There you go.
Excellent.
Letterboxd is a social media site for lovers and viewers of film to talk at, with, amongst, and for each other about different types of movies. It is a place that says something of bottom-up democracy. You have your popular figures, but anyone can chime in on a movie and let them know what their thoughts are. They can write in-depth, poignant reviews, just like Roger Ebert and critics of old, or they can also write these snappy little one-liners. And
Of course, the most famous of these figures on Letterboxd is Matthew Film Guy.
Yes, feature guest on the show, Matthew Film Guy. And so what we do for these movies, we, of course, being the royal we, because I do this, is pull the ones that are funny, insightful, pithy, whatever. There's something there that is worth mentioning. It isn't necessarily that somebody has the most followers. It's just that it strikes the fancy at the moment in time about this movie. So Letterboxd is a site. It's probably one of the most social media sites I like, frankly. And yeah, that's the bit.
All right. Letterboxd one-liners with Conan Neutron is
Let's
brought
go.
to you by, I don't know.
Nothing.
Hopefully
It's brought to you
Letterboxd
by a
one day.
hologram Conan Neutron with Jack Harkness's face.
Starting with number 1.
Number 1. Those aliens are just like those bugs you want to squash, except they're fucking huge and terrifying.
Amen.
He
You
talks
know what
real
I always
fast.
say to that? The
True.
only good bug, or the only good bug is a dead bug.
Yes.
Starship Troopers owes I love Starship Troopers, but owes so much to Aliens. Like
No, I felt that throughout it. Like Starship Troopers is literally feels like it's parodying Alien, which is funny because before that I felt like it was parodying like Full Metal Jacket and like you know what I mean, like yeah.
Sometimes a family is a lesbian in a jumpsuit, an orphan girl, guy named Dwayne, and a really nice synthetic.
She's not a lesbian though, is she?
Well,
No,
she seems interested in.
She's
in,
into
in-
Doctor Who in the third one.
Well, she seems interested in the guy that looks exactly like fucking Bill Paxton, which is kind of funny. Like I had trouble telling the two of them apart sometimes during this movie, but
the guy that isn't Game Over, right?
yeah.
Yeah, the guy's.
Am I allowed to say I was horny for Sigourney Weaver the whole time?
Yes, you are, Lucy. Yes.
We do not kink shame.
They even have her like everybody else is wearing the army stuff in the beginning, and she's like wearing the panties during the scene where they get out of the the hypersleep things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She should really get a percentage of the sales of that particular style of underwear, I think. But whatever. Nobody asked me. It's no Cars 2. As far as sequels go, it's still incredible. That's Tyler Lantern there.
Which, by the way, at the end of this, I asked on both Facebook and Twitter for people's favorite sequels, and I'll read some of those responses at the end of this.
Shrek 2.
Me, immediately upon seeing the Xenomorph. Queen, oh, I know this big bitch got some tea. Movie enjoyer.
Yes, Queen.
Wow.
Ahab.
Somebody wake up Hicks.
Yeah, Hicks was the one that she was like kind of having a bit of a romantic connection with, right?
Hicks is the non-Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton, yes.
Yeah.
Mom mentality at its finest.
What? What is that?
It's like a play on mom mentality, but mom.
Oh.
The Alien Queen versus the True Queen, Sigourney Weaver. James.
Amen.
Testify. Did the math, and I do believe on a purely technical level, get away from her, you bitch. Does in fact pass the Bechdel test.
Well, it's also a callback to the original Alien, where she's like, "You bitch" at the end of it.
Yep.
She has a lot of killer lines. That's an all-timer.
Has everybody seen Vicar of Dibley? It's a British. It's a British.
You speaking Elvish to me?
Yeah.
I started it, but I haven't finished it.
Okay. I'm going to kind of spoil a line for you. But one of the characters is getting proposed to, and he goes, "Remember what Sigourney Weaver said in Aliens?" And Alice looks confused and goes, "Get away from her, you bitch!" It's like, no. Before that,
Billy.
But speaking of sequels, I want to go to final thoughts. Starting with Erica, final thoughts on Aliens.
7 Z's.
My final thoughts on this movie are that it is excellent, and I can't think of any ways to improve on it.
Hire a Latina woman to play Vasquez.
Oh, okay. I
Andy,
stand corrected. That would definitely. Okay.
She was I don't know how much of it we saw in the clips, but like she was like clearly white, and then they clearly had like browned her down a little bit.
Yeah, do you know what her name is?
You're right.
The actress's name, I had pulled it up right here. It's where did it go?
Scarlett Johansson.
Jeanette Goldstein.
Yeah.
But I mean, she gave
Is
a
she
great
Jewish?
performance. I would imagine so with that name.
Post West Side Story world, they were still tanning their actors.
Wow, Natalie Wood played.
I thought she really was Latina, but like, and I think a lot of other people did too. But like, no, that's probably the only thing I could think of to improve this movie is bring in an actual Latina woman to play Vasquez.
Yeah.
But
Some
go ahead.
diversity, probably in the crew as well. I'm sure there could be
Continue
more
your
diversity in the
thoughts.
crew. But yeah, no, I love it. I don't know what else. to say.
It's a good.
Keep it brief.
People love it. People are talking about
We're
it.
talking about it more and more.
All right, Kristina.
Who's next?
Kristina, let's hear some final thoughts.
Okay.
No Shrek 2, goddamn, we'll kick you right off the show.
As someone who saw this movie as a child, as a 7-year-old who clearly shouldn't have seen this movie, but whatever. It's an excellent sequel. I think James Cameron, he knew to pay homage to Ridley Scott and not try to like fuck this up, because he knew that he was, touching something that was very, sensitive in a way. I just think it's an excellent movie with a lot of heart, surprisingly, and also too, it's essentially a zombie film, but in space. And the effects and all that were done. It's really sad that people don't want to be imaginative and creative and try to still use those techniques that were applied back then in film.
Zombies in
I agree.
space. All right, that was
good.
I feel like I've watched that.
You probably have.
Jason goes to space at one time at one Friday the 13th movie.
So did the Leprechaun.
By the way, I never got my episode of Parallax Views watching Leprechaun in the Hood with Jason. I told JG Michael that I wanted that is an idea for an episode.
It's an idea, all right.
Conan, let's hear some final thoughts.
Sure. Well, if it isn't the best sequel of all time, it's up there. It's a tie with like Godfather 2, Wrath of Khan, Dawn of the Dead, T2, Empire Strikes Back. It passes the Planet of the Apes test, which I mentioned earlier, which is what you're into when you read the title. There's not going to be anyone serenaded in a canoe in this film. It's about aliens. There's more of them this time. It's also one of the high water mark of action genre films. Like there's things that we think of as tropes because of this film, and small individual scenes like them being the aliens being above them, things like that are just it still works. And also, I'm amazed that we got through this without talking about how badass Bill Paxton's cowardly character is, because game over, man, game over has to be one of the best lines of like any sci-fi movie. And the fact that he is fundamentally correct about everything, but nobody wants to hear it from him.
Well, we talked about that part.
We talked about that. I can't remember if that was on air, on mic or off air, but like that is amazing to me. And that is something that every time I see it, like I get super excited when I see him on the screen. Like, fuck yeah, Bill Paxton's awesome. And
which, by the way, R.I.P. R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. to a legend.
Totally.
And apparently, like that was a thing that he would
say.
He'd be like in the mall, and somebody would come up to him and shout the line. But he was always like cool about it. Like, yeah, it's
or like him saying like, "Well, I'll be goddamned" or whatever from Titanic or something like that. That's another line that people
not everything's about Titanic, Kristina.
I know. I'm just, but that's because James Cameron liked using him in these projects.
But point of fact, this is one of the best sci-fi action films, and there's so many movies that we love and that we think about that would not exist because of this. And again, going back to what I said in Alien, there is a pre-Ripley and a post-Ripley world.
Yeah. All right, Andy.
This film also kind of creates a pre-Aliens and post-Aliens film. So the sci-fi action films really didn't quite exist. I mean, there were more adventure films. If you look at Planet of the Apes, if you look at Omega Man, any of the other kind of what would have been called sci-fi action, but I think nowadays we can kind of call it more adventure, because that's more of what it was than as opposed to this, where it's like a Vietnam War movie set in space. And it certainly kind of captures it weirdly slotted itself into like the world of 1986 in ways that's really incredible. And that like you didn't quite see, because you're just you're enjoying the ride, because that ride is so good. And it is a near perfect movie with the only one flaw I pointed out.
Yeah, All right. Well,
Thank God he interrupted a woman to show it, by the way. Yeah.
my final thought, putting my hand right here. You were always an asshole, Conan.
Dum-de-dum.